Welcome to the BiggerPockets Business Podcast, show number 66.
Welcome to a real-world MBA from the School of Hard Knocks, where entrepreneurs reveal what it really takes to make it. Whether you're already in business or you're on your way there, this show is for you. This is BiggerPockets Business.
How's it going, everybody? I am Jay Scott. I'm your co-host for the BiggerPockets Business Podcast. And once again, I'm here with my lovely co-host, Mrs. Carol Scott. How's it going today, Carol?
Doing really well, but I think that we as parents and business owners are joining a lot of people around the country right now in this whole crazy dilemma of what do we do with our kids to make sure they continue learning, right? All the back to school choices are coming up and we know what we're doing, but we are definitely empathizing with all of you who are in a similar situation, just trying to do what's right for your family, what's right for the kids, and just make the best of the situation that we're in. So hang in there, everyone. We'll somehow get through it all.
Yes, absolutely. This whole COVID situation has changed life for pretty much all of us, which is a good lead-in for our guest today. He certainly changed his life around based on COVID. His name is John Berlingieri, and he is a serial entrepreneur who spent much of his youth and post-college work experience in the manufacturing world. His grandfather owned an aeronautical manufacturing company, and he's done manufacturing his whole life. He's had several businesses focused on manufacturing. And when COVID came along, he saw an amazing opportunity to capitalize from a business standpoint and also help people with this whole COVID crisis. So back in the beginning of April, he came up with this idea for creating a sanitizing station, basically a walk-in station where you can go in and it would do a whole bunch of stuff to ensure that you are safe from COVID and those around you are safe from you if you have COVID. And over the next couple months, March, April, he basically went from concept to manufacturing this $20,000 product. And on our show today, he's going to talk all about how he came up with the idea for the sanitizing station and how in just 2 months, he went from just pure idea to building this thing, dealing with disrupted supply chains, getting stuff from China. I mean, it's just a great story. And it's a great example of how in this difficult COVID time, we as entrepreneurs really need to be pivoting and changing our business to do whatever it takes to continue to make money and to continue to be successful. Make sure you listen all the way through because John has some amazing tips for investors. And one of the best tips that I've heard in a really long time about what we as entrepreneurs, investors, business owners should be reading. What should we be reading today to really keep on top of what's going on in the world and be able to compete with the best of them as successful entrepreneurs? If you want to learn anything more about John, about his company, about his product, check out our show notes at biggerpockets.com/bizshow66. Again, that's biggerpockets.com/bizshow66. Now, without any further ado, let's bring John Berlingieri onto the show.
John, it is so great to have you here today. Welcome to our show. We are so looking forward to hearing all about the National Safety, Health, and Compliance Commission in your amazing product, the Sanitizing Station. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jane, Carol. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
I've been listening to you guys since day one, and I'm happy to be on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I love your product because, and I'm just going to start out with, I'm glad we have you here because one of the things that I've noticed over the last few months is that there been kind of two types of entrepreneurs, those that are kind of trying to figure out how to be successful and keep their business moving forward, status quo, and those that are kind of taking the tact, got to pivot, got to do something different, gotta stand out, and really kind of leverage, to use an overused term, the new normal. And I love the fact that you've kind of dove headfirst into kind of doing this whole pivot and taking advantage of the changes that have gone on. And so I just have a whole lot of questions. I know Carol does as well, not just about your business, but about like all the decisions that went into this huge leap off a cliff to do a big project that's COVID related. So
Yes.
with all that said, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, what kind of got you into business and entrepreneurship, kind of where it all started.
Sure. So I come from, I wouldn't say a long line of entrepreneurs. So my grandfather, who I'm actually named after, so he's from Italy. After World War II, he was a farm boy in Italy, and it was devastated, war-torn Italy in the 1940s and 50s. He moved to Argentina, and he became a machinist. And he was working at multiple factories and in other industrial plants. So we were in Argentina. My dad was born there, as were his siblings. And then in the mid-70s, they came to New York. And my grandfather was working as a machinist during the Vietnam War, creating airplane parts for the military, for Grumman, for Boeing. And then he brought my family over, well, my dad and his siblings, and they started their own company. It was a machine shop, defense contractor, and they just progressively built the business. They started with one machine in a basement, actually, and kept building a second machine, a third machine, getting more contracts, being a subcontractor for other big contractors, and just progressively kept building the business. And in the mid to late 90s, I started working there after school. I was 9 years old, 10 years old, sweeping the floors, cleaning the toilets, washing the windows, and then progressively started helping assembling parts, part marking. And as I grew up into a teenager, I started going onto the machines, the CNC, large computer controlled machines that mill, because there's a milling and turning. We actually mill and cut the steel, the titanium, the aluminum, and custom make aircraft parts, and also parts for satellites, for NASA, all different big contractors like Harris, like I said, Boeing, Grumman, directly for the military, the Navy, the Coast Guard. And that's how I got my taste of engineering and aeronautical engineering. And that's how I just progressed along and kept learning more and more about the machinery and the assemblies. And the precision that goes into making aircraft parts is mind-blowing. I mean, they call it the tolerances, or if you took a human hair and split it 7 times, if the part was in or out of those dimensions by 0.001 of an inch, it was scrap. So dealing with all the documentation behind that, the precision of manufacturing, and then controlling those parts, right? These parts are going on fighter jets. So the amount of paperwork and traceability that's behind that gave me a really good insight into manufacturing at a high level. So I was able to parlay that knowledge onto other projects that I was involved with, going past that initial learning curve.
So did you go to school for engineering? I mean, it sounds like you were doing manufacturing and engineering and aeronautical engineering type work early on. Was this before college, after college, during college? What did you study in college?
It was before college, so from a young teenager, or like a boy, almost at 9, 10 years old, to my late teens, early 20s. I learned hands-on. I sat in on meetings. That's how I had all my whole business experience. Anytime an accountant, an attorney, an inspector from the government, or another outside inspector, because we had the ISO 9001, and also the AS 9100 certification specifically for the aircraft manufacturing. I would sit on all those meetings and all the audits and learn through that experience. So that was like one of my request to my dad and to my uncles and aunts is, hey, can I sit on literally every meeting you guys have from 17, 18, 19? And I would just be quiet and just sit there and try to absorb all the information and just learn.
So After working for your grandfather's business and getting experience and getting an education, what kind of did you go into entrepreneurship, business ownership yourself right after that, or did you get a job outside of college with somebody else? What was the progression from here? You are, you see the entrepreneurship with your family. You have an engineering background now. What are the next steps that lead you to kind of say, okay, I'm ready to be a business owner myself?
So actually, in the early 2000s, I was into eBay and going to auctions. So actually the storage unit auctions before the storage wars and all the TV shows, there was literally like 5 or 10 of us going around to all the storage unit auctions. So that's besides the factory that I would work during the day, I would either on the weekends go to these auctions and try to resell the items on eBay. And I went to college. I had almost a third of a scholarship, almost a half of a scholarship. And I was there for about 1 semester and I dropped out because I just wanted to get into the business world and pull the trigger and get involved while everyone's coming in drunk and high, in their pajamas. I just wanted to get right into it. So I just started doing the auctions a lot. And then I got a little warehouse with a partner and we were selling the products on eBay. And that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey, reselling online.
Okay, and so that was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You're buying and selling, you're doing transactional.
Yes.
Where did you go from there?
So then I was doing the eBay, so say for about a year or so. I went back to my dad's shop, and when I took a greater role in managing and the operations and the shipping, receiving of his factory. And I traveled to Italy during that time and to visit a friend who was studying overseas. And I saw a breathalyzer vending machine in Italy. And I said, that seems like a really cool idea. I was 21 at the time, juniors in college, or my buddies were. And I bought one of those machines. And I showed it to my dad, a couple of the other engineers, and I said, hey, look at this machine. It's going really well in Europe. Let's bring it to the US. So we reverse engineered it, made our own. And, we make airplane parts. So to make a vending machine is easy work, more or less for us. And then I started a breathalyzer vending machine company. From actually seeing it in Italy, I said, hey, let's do it. And we started manufacturing a couple samples. I marketed them. And within like 3 weeks, I sold like $50,000 worth of breathalyzer machines. I was
What?
like, I might be on to something.
This is your early 20s, your
Early
first
20s.
like real kind of solid product manufacturing situation on your own after your
Yes.
eBay thing. You saw this product in Italy, said, I want to bring that to the US. There's not competition yet. You go back to your shop where you're manufacturing precise parts for airlines. So this for airplanes. So the concept of this breathalyzer machine, you're like, oh heck, I can do this in my sleep. This is nothing compared to what we're used to doing. And you sold that much right out of the gates. That's
Right out
phenomenal.
of the gate.
Phenomenal. That is the coolest thing. So I think you mentioned that your dad was working with you maybe at the time. Did you have other business partners doing this, or was it solely the two of you? What was the arrangement there?
He's solely the two. My dad was just helping in an advisory role. So I was 100% owner in that. And then we just kept progressing along with the first prototypes. We got the orders. We first, were fulfilling the orders. One of my main ideas with the breathalyzer is reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, having residual income. So I was like, oh, if I can have a few, may I have a route of say 50 or 100 vending machines, then, these can be mini rental houses. I can net say 50 or 100 or $200 a month off of each vending machine. So if you do the math, if I have 50 and make 100 a month, I was like, oh, I can, make $5,000 a month, residual income. And help people with drinking and driving. They can check themselves with the breathalyzer. So trying to do some good for the community, but while also making money. So I also listed them for sale, and like I said, they sold like $50,000 worth within 3 weeks. So I kind of shifted from the route perspective of placing machines, and I ended up placing a bunch of machines also. But I actually took them off the wall so I could fulfill the order. So the ones I already had placed, I had to kind of backtrack, and I sold and fulfilled the orders, and then I got another office space, a warehouse, and we just went into production, and making a few hundred and a few thousand, and I was selling distributorships throughout the U.S. So we had like 50 in Vegas, 50 in Miami, 50 in L.A. Like pretty much every big city we had a distributor in, and we ended up selling like 3 or 4 thousand machines in total. Then a lot of competition from China came in, Korea, like just other manufacturers came in and kind of just killed the market and lowered the price significantly till there was little to no margin.
Well, I'll tell you, we could have an entire show just on that business and that product.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I didn't know about that. If I would have known that, I probably would have said, "Hey, let's do that one first."
Yeah.
So maybe we'll come back and have you back just to talk about that business, because it sounds like there are a lot of great lessons learned there. But I want to get kind of up to today. So where did
Yes.
you go from that business, and how did that kind of lead you to we get into this COVID crisis, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to do a product that is specifically geared towards what's going on in the world today?
Sure. So, I mean, I went kind of fast with the breathalyzer company, but that was over a span of like 2 or 3 years. I was able to sell it. I should have, looking back in retrospect, I should have sold it at its peak. And that was my first company that did over $1 million in revenue. I should have sold it, when we were doing 1.1, 1.2. I probably could have got like 700,000-800,000 for it. And I ended up, just kind of riding the wave, thinking I was going to come out with another product, and I ended up selling it for a fraction of that, selling the route and the components and everything. So after that, I kind of went right into Amazon. So back to the transactional, eBay kind of ran its course more or less, and I got into Amazon and Amazon FBA and selling products on that. And then the whole COVID thing happened, right? So I was essentially out of business with my Amazon FBA. I was selling non-essential products, so I couldn't send any more products in. I was just selling through my inventory. And I have a partner. I'm sure you guys know of the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO.
Yep.
So I'm a member of EO. I was actually an accelerator, so to be a member of EO, you have to do over $1 million in revenue. Right. So they have an awesome program. So for accelerators, if you do a minimum of 250,000 in revenue, you can become an accelerator with the hopes of getting you above that million mark within 3 years. So I was in Entrepreneur Organization Accelerator Program, and I had this really awesome coach who's my mentor. His name's AJ Caro, who's actually my partner now. And he's very successful. He has a large security company with like over 1,500 guards, and also a home healthcare company that has home healthcare aides with also about 1,500 employees. So he started from nothing, built it up. So he has like over close to 3,000 employees. Really smart guy, organized, systems driven. So I learned a lot from him, and he told me that he had a case of COVID in his finance department. And he called a decontamination company to clean the office, and it was like $1 or something a square foot. He's like, I just spent like $4,000 or $5,000 on decontamination. I'm sure it's going to happen again somewhere here or at another office, one of our friends' office. Let's start a decontamination company. So I said, all right, let's do some research on the foggers, the machines, and everything. And we started off in that realm of decontamination cleaning. And there's so many companies, ServPro. Just every janitorial company or every carpet cleaning guy became a decontamination company with like little to no certifications in general, besides like ServPro and people that are versed in that area. So we said, are we going to be, one of 100 different guys decontaminating? We're too business savvy. I have my manufacturing background. He's very systems driven. Let's see if we can come up with some type of like sanitizing booth or sanitizing station. So we were researching online, and we saw in Asia, because Asia already was, say, 3, 4, 5 months ahead of us. What are they doing? They're very smart. They're ingenious. What are they doing to tackle this problem? In Thailand, there was college students that set up a carport, and they had UV lights, and it's some type of misting system in there. I mean, it looked kind of cheesy. It was like a big tent carport, but the idea was there. The concept was there. I said, let's see if we can, come up with a prototype. So then
And was,
AJ started building one.
was this March
Sure.
or April or May? What give us kind of nail down the time frame that you actually started on this?
We're talking March,
Okay.
mid March. AJ and I had this conversation actually on an EO call. We started a weekly call, and that's when he brought up that he had COVID in his finance department. And then we transitioned into the station or booth in like early to mid April.
So you
That's how.
wasted no time. You wasted no
No
time.
time.
And I think it's also, listeners, I think it's also really important that you know John's geographic location. John, tell everyone where you're located and where you're working out of, because I think that helps set the stage of why maybe one
Right.
of the many reasons you were so ingrained in this right off the bat and saw the urgency.
You're right. So we're based in New York, specifically on Long Island, which is, about an hour east of Manhattan. But everyone can, a lot of people commute in and out of the city. So we're very connected to Manhattan and New York City, which was hit, and it was devastating here. It was unbelievable. I had neighbors that passed, frontline workers that passed. It just horrible. Like it hit us like a ton of bricks out of nowhere. And so we were exposed to it first. And then, as an entrepreneur, and just my personality, I wanted to help and try to fix the situation. I can't just sit on the sidelines and just let this happen while everyone shut down. So that's how we just pivoted right away and saw what the Asian community was doing in Asia, and just tried to start making prototypes and copy what they were doing and put our spin on it.
That's really cool.
So
And I find it also definitely noteworthy that, it's almost come full circle where you're talking about 20-ish years ago, you were overseas and you saw the breathalyzer machine. And you had mentioned earlier a big draw of that product is that you were helping people, right? You saw an opportunity for a business, but
Right.
also one that was going to save lives. And I think it's fascinating that here we are 20 years later, you're in the epicenter of this crisis. I'm so sorry to hear that you had neighbors who passed and so on. And you were just like,
Thank you.
we're not just going to sit by and let this happen. We have the power, the knowledge, the expertise to do something about this. So you decided to tackle it head on. I think that's very, just very smart in so many ways. So first, I'm just so curious. This is a big undertaking, right? We're talking about, you saw this carport type of thing with the plastic on the sides, and it sprayed, the disinfectant and whatever. So first, can you tell us what your take on the sanitizing station is, and how I guess how you first started the product development and how it
Sure.
evolved, please.
So it's interesting that you bring it up. There's a lot of similarities, and my mom brought it up a couple times, how it is similar to the breathalyzer machine, like you just stated. So my partner and I started making prototypes. So he's actually very handy also and mechanical, and we were up late at night about like 10:30, and I'm in his office, and like I said, we found that product in Thailand. Then a couple days later, he out of PVC piping, he built a station, or at least the framing of it. So we thought we were going to build it out of PVC, and then we can wrap it with some type of boat wrap, like like the boat shrink wrap that you winterize the boats with. I said, hey, let's try that, but then it was a little too flimsy. Then we progressed on to vinyl fence. Hey, let's get some vinyl fencing. Let's get like the 8-foot sections, and we'll put them together, and we'll make like a rectangular box out of that. We can hook up some sprayers, maybe some UV lights to it. So that was the second prototype. So we went from the PVC piping to the PVC fence. And then I went back to the sheet metal shop that built the vending machine case for the breathalyzer. So I hit them up. I said, oh, wow, I haven't seen you in, 10, 15 years, in a while. And I said, hey, I have a new idea. Let's build this. And so I was with them and for a couple weeks, and we ended up building the frame, or, the actual outside casing of the sanitizing station. So that's how we progressed along from PVC to sheet metal, because the PVC was a little too flimsy, but we got the concept, we got the sizing, we got the whole schematics of it down. And then we went to, like I said, to the sheet metal shop, and then we just kept fine tuning it, adding features here, adding features there, ordering samples from China, like tablets and the pumps and all the electronics, the breakers, and all the internal guts for the machine.
I've got to know, John, I'm so curious. Well, first of all, this is so fascinating, all of these different parts and all of these different components that have to work together to construct it. Just from a logistics perspective, I've got to know, how were you able to get these components from China? I mean, I know in my industry, in real estate and staging, and even on Amazon right now, you order anything and stuff is back ordered. Stuff that used to take 2 and 3 and 4
You're
days
right.
maybe is now weeks and weeks and weeks. What were you able to do to get all your stuff so quickly and efficiently so that you could work through these prototypes?
Calling on connections in the industry from electrical suppliers. We have, family friends in the electrical supply business. So AJ and I would just do it like a shotgun blast. If we needed UVC lights, we would place orders in 4 different areas on AliExpress, Alibaba, Amazon, and then say a local supplier. And whoever came in first, we would just, use that, knowing that, like you mentioned, that Amazon from 1-day Prime turned into 2-week Prime out of nowhere. So we would just blast everyone for go after 4 or 5 suppliers for each component. And then, we'd be calling and texting each other like, oh, hey, I got this in. Oh, I got this part in. Where's the other parts? Check the tracking. And everything was delayed and backed up. But, if you try 4 or 5 different avenues, generally one will come through.
That is such a great tip in and of itself, right? So often we hear or we think about, as small business owners, we hit a roadblock and I can't get this done because, but you and your partner were having nothing to do with that. We're like, we're just going to keep hitting up person after supplier, whatever we have to do until somebody can come through and give us the materials we need. So I just think that's a really great takeaway and a really great reminder that often things are a lot more within our power if you have the right approach.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
Here's the thing that really strikes me, that stands out here, is that maybe you have a different attitude, but from an outside perspective, this seems like a huge risk. So we have COVID going on. It's mid-March. There's a lot of disagreement about whether this is going to be a 2-month lockdown, right, and then everything gets back to normal. There's talk of, by the time summer comes, the virus is going to be gone and we're not going to have this concern anymore. Other people saying, yeah, it could be 6 months or 12 months. But even at the worst case scenario, most people back in March were saying, yeah, in a year we're going to have a vaccine. So you're sitting here spending an inordinate amount of time and energy and presumably money to build this product that by the time you have something that's ready to go to market, for all you know, the market's not going to exist anymore. So if we got here to June or May, whenever you had your first product ready to sell, the virus could have petered out. You didn't know that. So what was kind of the calculus going on in your head to decide whether this was actually worth it to put in all this time, energy, and money, knowing that the market might not exist by the time you're done?
That is a very good question. I mean, that was one of our main concerns. Hey, is this going to be a 3-month ordeal, 6-month? And nowadays, we're not even talking months anymore. Is this going to be a year, 2-year, 3-year ordeal, or the next 10 years? Just like after 9/11, right? I was a teenager when 9/11 happened, and all the security changed at the airports, and now we're just used to everything being post 9/11. We just saw how devastating it was in Asia. I mean, in China, how many tens of thousands of deaths happened, and then in New York. I mean, when it really hit New York, and my friends, other entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, other factory owners, just shutting their business down left and right. Like, we've never dealt with anything like this before. So we could just see the writing on the wall indicating that this may be a long ordeal. We're not getting back to normal. And also the stock market just, crashing horribly and just, day after day, holy crap, another 1,000, 2,000 points. Oil, remember, oil was like negative, like 30 something dollars. They were paying people to take oil. So if kind of combining all of those factors, the businesses shutting down, stock market crashing, and everything else going on, to recover from this wasn't going to be a 1 month thing. We were taking the risk, hey, maybe 6 months. And now that everyone's hypersensitive with the social distancing, the mask wearing, this is just going to become the new normal. And we just decided to take the plunge and run into the fire.
Yeah, it was a big bet, because now that I think about it, you didn't just have the risk of the virus going away. You also had the risk of, what if the virus stays really, really bad and we stay in lockdown? If we're in lockdown, well, nobody's going to use your product. If the virus goes away, nobody's going to use your product. Your product is valuable in the situation that we ended up in, which is we're opening up, but we're trying to be hyper vigilant and safe and hygienic. And this is kind of like a best case scenario for your product. Had it gone either other extreme, virus goes away or the virus gets so bad that we're back in lockdown, your product isn't useful. But you kind of came out of this in an absolute best case scenario, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it seems to be that way right now. A lot of my friends and associates and even our factory, because we're an aircraft manufacturer and work for the government, we were essential. So I had that in mind. At least the essential workers were working, which is still a decent amount of the population, the food processing facilities, the factories, everyone the toilet paper. Remember when toilet paper was such a hot commodity, it didn't exist anymore. Those areas were still working, and at least we would know that we would be able to supply those offices, those critical offices and factories with the machine, because there's a way to take temperatures and also disinfect people as they go through the machine. But just rewinding a little bit in regards to other entrepreneurs and how the example I gave when I was looking for components at this critical time, we placed orders with 4 or 5 suppliers. Same thing happened when we were building the website and the brochures and everything. I like to leverage virtual assistants online. So on Upwork, on Fiverr, I would hire, and I've been using them for about 10 years. And it's the VAs. Any entrepreneur, get a VA. All your web developers and all your marketing people, they use the VAs and just send you a bill for 5 times the price. So learn how to use Fiverr and Upwork. So in regards to the web developer, I hired like 2 or 3 web developers at one time. Like one expensive, one medium priced, and then like one like maybe a little bit lower priced, and then like see what they would come up with. And then I would mix and match, from one virtual assistant from another, and then we'd make like a really good website. And then same thing with the brochure. I would just send it out to say 3 different people, and see what they can come up with in case someone, say one of those virtual assistants got COVID or the internet shut down. You have to have multiple backups, and especially with something this critical and on such a short timeline. We had to get it done as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was actually the next question I was going to ask you was about like the timeline, because you had to get things out. If this took 6 months or 12 months or 24 months, you potentially most likely miss your opportunity. And so it sounds like redundancy and having multiple vendors and multiple suppliers and multiple writers and multiple virtual assistants was kind of the key to getting everything out quickly. So just for our listeners and for my knowledge, can you walk us through exactly what the design of the machine does? How does the machine work? I mean, we'll have a link to the website in our show notes so anybody can go and take a look and get more detail. But just for those listening right now, explain to us exactly what the technology is. What happens when I see this machine and I walk into it?
Sure, of course. So now in regards to the machine, we saw that right out of the gate that there were nurses, EMTs taking temperatures outside of buildings, right? So we said, okay, that's a critical component. We need to take people's temperatures. There's hand sanitizers that are popping up everywhere. So, I mean, they've been around, but now they're everywhere. So temperature taking and hand sanitizer, that seems to be one of the most critical components. So in the sanitizing station, the first 2 steps is having a tablet on the wall that takes people's temperatures. And also we incorporated into the tablet facial recognition. So we can connect that to an access control system into a building, and it can take photographs of anyone that went through the machine. So it can timestamp you, like, time, date, and also your temperature. So we can record that showing that, okay, look, everyone that went through the building had a normal temperature. Or for example, maybe someone had an abnormal temperature. At least we have a record of that. So getting back to the question, as you walk into the machine, put your face up to the tablet, you get, it's all contactless, no touching at all. You get your temperature read, and it'll tell you if you have a normal temperature or an above normal temperature. And on top of the machine, we have a green and red light. So in case we have 5 of these machines lined up at a stadium and a security guard's monitoring them, they would easily be able to see if someone had an abnormal temperature and can pull them off the line. So that's why we added the light at the top of the unit. Then after you get your temperature taken and say everything's good, you get the green light. It tells you, great, you have a normal temperature. You put your hand down, and also contactless hand sanitizer. You get a portion of hand sanitizer. And then you walk through the plastic partitions, and there's an all-natural, FDA-approved disinfectant that sanitizes your whole body. And it's not a skin irritant or eye irritant. You can breathe it. You know what? This is how everyone will know what solution we're using. When you go into the grocery store and you see the produce getting misted, I always thought they were getting watered, right? It's not. It's this specific solution that we're using, so it's safe. We drink it. We've eaten it before, and that's the same product that we're using. And it's called HOCl. That's like the technical name of it. It's essentially electrolyzed water. It's like a saline solution. And they use it in eye contact solution cleaner.
So cool. This is so fascinating. I'm absolutely loving hearing all the steps. And of course, I was looking at your website earlier and some news articles you've had and so on. And just everything about the machine, it just seems so brilliantly designed. So curious who you worked with to figure out the different components that were necessary. Like, for example, I didn't even realize until you mentioned it just now that there's the red and green light on top of the machine. So it's easy to identify somebody who has a high temperature, for example. So who were the types of people that you collaborated with to say, hey, we're thinking about doing this type of machine. What are the things that would make it a successful product?
So seeing what the market was doing right now, what everyone's response was. So like my partner AJ, he has the home healthcare agency. So they were being asked to take temperatures outside of office buildings. So we knew that was a critical component. We had to take temperatures. Then doing research online, and found out that in Asia and Europe, because Europe got hit before us, they had tablets, like Android tablets, that would take your temperature. So they have like a thermal imaging scanner above the tablet. And so we bought that and integrated it into the machine. So we just had to do all the wiring, the back end electrical on that. The hand sanitizer was pretty simple. It's just a wall mounted hand sanitizer. So we just mounted that to the side of the machine also. And then the disinfecting spray, everyone's concerned, what are they spraying on us, right? That's a huge concern. So doing extensive research, what is on the EPA list, on the EPA N list? What is CDC approved? What's FDA approved? And there's a bunch of things that kill or inactivate the virus on hard surfaces, but what's safe on humans? So I'm thinking, what do they use to sterilize water, right? And this product they use to sterilize water. What do they use to clean food? Like at a chicken processing plant. This is what they spray on the chicken. This is what they spray on the food prep areas. And through a lot of research, that was probably one of the most difficult parts is finding the proper sanitizing solution that's safe. And I sprayed it on myself. I had dozens of people go through it. I've gargled with it. I sprayed it in my face. And that I wanted to test it. I was my own guinea pig, as were other members of the team. So that's how we went through the whole process of seeing what components are critical, and how can we integrate them all into one station.
I love this. So, so cool. And again, I'd like to point out it sounds very much like a lot of your experiences have come full circle because you talked about earlier back when you were even a teenager sitting in with your grandfather, with your aunts and uncles working at the manufacturing company. You were sitting in with government agencies. You were sitting in on these high level meetings with these stakeholders in a lot of different industries at very high levels at a very young age. So I think it's really cool and noteworthy that that has served you so well on this product. I think it's really neat. So talk to us about the marketing and the sales process of this product.
Sure. So we were trying to see who would be in need of the product right away. So right, schools got shut down. So we were thinking about, schools definitely need it. Any essential workers. So back to the factories, back to those office buildings that are critical that no one really thinks about, but like say like some back end office work that does taxes, right? Those are still critical. We have to get our taxes done that do payroll, that do IT work. So that's who we were marketing to initially, and is who our clients have been so far. Critical offices or essential workers that work in offices, and also the schools specifically in New York. They have to submit their plans for reopening by July 31st. And some school districts, we are incorporated in that reopening plan so far. Actually, we just had a meeting this yesterday morning for a charter school, and they were interested in getting 10 of them, and they're adding us to their reopening plan that needs to be approved by the state.
That is absolutely awesome. I love this. I love this whole story. So I want to go back and revisit the timeline. So you started on beginning of April to develop a product. You went through prototypes. And I don't know if you know the exact day, but like about when was the first product ready to be manufactured and shipped?
I'd probably say end of May.
Okay, so less than 2 months from like we have this idea to we have a product that we're ready to actually manufacture and sell.
You're right. Yes. I mean, I was working literally like 18 hours, like 100 hours a week, 18-hour days, just nonstop. Like my wife thought I was going to have a heart attack because I was just like not sleeping, just working like crazy, just like, and then also being in contact with China, they're 12 hours ahead of East Coast. So, we just start talking at like 11 p.m. and then we go to like 3 a.m. and then I'm up again at like 7 or 8 in the morning doing it all over again.
So basically what you're saying is hard work is a component of success.
Integral.
That's interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard that before. No, I love it because it's not just hard work, but it's smart work, and it's willing to take a risk, and it's willing to do all these things that we think about with an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, but a lot of times it's not all at the same time. You have to take a risk at the beginning, and then you have to put in some hard work, and then you have to make contacts. You had to do all of this kind of simultaneously because again your market window is potentially very small. So 2-month period where you had to make the decision to take this risk, you had to make the investment, you had to build the contacts, the relationships, you had to do the prototyping, you had to start doing the marketing, start doing the sales, all in this short period of time. Can you give us an idea of, so who was your first, do you remember who your first customer was?
Yes, actually it was an office building. So they had essential workers. Actually, it was another home healthcare agency, and they had also visiting nurses. And their staff was nonstop. They never shut down. So they have staff coming in and out of the building constantly, and they were the first company to implement the machine.
So when we have a machine, like this is a large machine, you actually walk into it. Yes. I'm curious, like what was the process? You get this order. Do you have a bunch of machines sitting around waiting to be shipped, or is it you get an order and you go and you start manufacturing it? How do you transport it? How do you install it? What's just the whole process? Because a lot of times we talk about products that are like just handheld things like widgets. A lot of our
Right.
entrepreneurs, and nothing wrong with that, that's great. But the whole manufacturing and shipping and fulfillment and setup is you don't have to think about those things. For something like this, you have to think about those things. So what's that process look like?
So so to fulfill that first order, it was our first five that we built. It was one of the first five. So we wanted to make sure that we were selling it locally so we can test it and get all the bugs out. So that was definitely a big part of it. We gave them a slight discount, knowing that we were going to be close and we were going to be kind of using them as a guinea pig. And they were cool with it, and they were excited to be the first company on in New York or anyone to actually have the machine. So we had a close partnership and relationship with them, and we designed the machine so it can be foldable, meaning that the walls can collapse in on each other. So in shipping, because say when it's up and assembled, it's like 7 feet tall. So that's kind of tall. So we made the walls collapsible so we can make it like 3.5 feet tall so it can ship easily. So we had all that in mind. We wanted to make sure all the components were plug and play. Let's say the pump burnt out or something happened. We could easily ship them another pump. They can unbolt it with like 4 bolts, plug it in, and it's back up and working. So that was the way that we were testing it in front of the first company. And we were there a couple times a week just adjusting things, programming the tablet for the temperature, getting those readings correct. And it was just a good relationship. So if anyone is thinking about having a product, something larger like this, or even a smaller product, working with a local company that would implement the product and maybe giving them a little discount and just working out all the kinks, over those couple weeks or couple months until it's perfected. And that's why, like, for example, we added the light. We added to the top of the machine. That wasn't in our first prototype. We added a couple more mister heads. Initially, we only had 2. Now we added 4. Adjusted the wheels. The wheels were locking and scraping, so we changed the wheels out. Just a couple different things that we just kept tweaking along the way until we have what we think is the perfected model right now. But as an engineer, I'm always trying to improve it, staying up at night, see how we can make it better, but little by little.
So
This is, go ahead, Jay.
no, go ahead, Carol.
I was just going to say, this is so cool. I'm just sitting here so fascinated by, like you mentioned earlier, Jay, the fact that you saw this need, you just went like guns blazing, figuring out how to produce this thing. You're now part of a school systems reopening plan. And I'm just thinking through the product itself and just seeing pictures of it, for example. Jay, remember a million years ago, it feels like, when we used to take the boys to Legoland, for example, and you already go through the security thing, right? The white piece of plastic thing before you actually have the person search you. And I'm thinking, this just seems like such an obvious answer for so many venues, right? For all the theme parks, for someday when sports become a thing again, right? I mean, I think the amount of foresight that went into this product and the way you subsequently developed it, and like you said, used the local companies so that you could be part of the ongoing tweaking and development, is just so brilliant all the way around. So I absolutely love everything about it. It's very cool.
Can you give us an idea of what your cost is to produce one of these? I mean, I know it's probably going to change over time as you get more scale and get better at manufacturing. But right now, just to get an idea of your margins, how much does it cost to produce one of these things, and what's your typical retail sales price?
So now the price of metal and the components, and also like the sanitizing situation, just like the PPE, everyone's, it's been hard to get masks. So the price has fluctuated. So right now we're around like the 10,000, 11,000 mark of our production costs. Obviously with volume, we'd like to get it down, to 8, 7,000. And our retail price is 18,000. So, I mean, there's a decent margin in there. If we were making it for 10, 11,000, we're selling it for 18.
Okay, so about 40% margins there.
Yeah, 40%. And then we have financing. So we worked with we actually have 2 financing companies that we're working with that are our equipment leasing companies. And they can, for a 36-month lease, they can get it down to about like $700 a month for the payments.
Got it. How long does it take to build one of these machines? Let's say somebody put in an order today for 100 of them. What does your lead time look like? What's the process look like?
We're talking about 30 to 45 days right now, so pretty quick. Like a normal lead time, it would say like 30 to 60 days, but we're trying to get it, 30 to 45 days right now.
Got it.
Very, very cool. I love it. I have one other question I'm so curious about. So
Sure.
the name of your company, right? It's the Sanitizing Station. Did I say that properly? Is that the accurate name of the product?
Yes, the product name Sanitizing Station, and I filed the trademark for it right in the beginning.
Right off the bat. Awesome.
Right off
And
the
then
bat.
your company itself is called the National Safety, Health, and Compliance Commission, which I would love to hear more about how the name of the company came about.
Sure. So keeping in mind, like that we spoke about earlier, that we didn't know how long, or nobody knows how long this whole crisis is going to last. So we said, let's start off with the safety and health part of it, with the sanitizing station and also the decontamination when we first started. And then let's say this kind of slows down over the next 6 to 12 months, we would like to get into a compliance part, say OSHA compliance or that ISO compliance for the factory. So we were going to start a division of compliance and go that route. So, I mean, we still have that on the back burner just in case, a couple of years down the road, this slows down. We will shift gears into maybe another safety compliance combination service, something like that.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I love the fact that the name sounds very formal. I know a lot of us.
Yes,
a lot of us we develop companies and products, and we want cute names or easy to remember names. But I guess there's value here in sounding formal and sounding like a company that if I hear the name of this company, I'm like, I trust them. Because it's not
right.
it's not like it doesn't sound like Bob Smith.
isanitizer.com
Right.
white cool thing
Right.
sitting on the sidewalk.
Right.
Bob Smith
Right.
Sanitizing Station.
No.
So yeah, we don't think a lot about, I don't think enough. I think about names a lot, but it's all part of your branding strategy. It's all part of building trust with your clients. It's all part of
Exactly.
conveying your brand.
You're right. And that you want to position yourself in the market to be as big as possible, right? So having a proper website, having an authoritative name, well, especially in our industry, if you get a call from the National Safety, Health, and Compliance Commission, you're like, who's this calling me? You're going to take it a little more serious, having an 800 number set up, getting all these things set up right away so you can appear larger than you are and have more authority, and people will take you more seriously. And that's, I see some entrepreneurs not taking those steps, and they're not taking it seriously in the marketplace where it's very competitive.
I love that. Very, very cool. So, John, the other thing that I think is just so beautifully done about the name of your company, like you mentioned earlier, it enables you to pivot as necessary. And it sounds like that's
Right.
a key theme throughout your entrepreneurial journey, is just this whole concept of pivoting when the time is right. So can you talk a little bit more about just to all the entrepreneurs out there in general, how you've been able to stay on top, to position your companies in such a way that you are able to pivot strategically, to pivot quickly, to make the decisions that are most relevant for what's necessary, depending on whatever's happening in the market, and the importance of other people to do that as well?
Sure. So one thing I do every morning is I read multiple news outlets. So I'll give my secrets. I read the Drudge Report, Al Jazeera, RT, Reuters. So I get, a right-leaning perspective, a left-leaning perspective. What are they doing in Europe? What are they doing in Asia, in Africa? Because as Americans, we're in our American bubble, right? Everything's whatever, CNN or Fox. And it's so interesting when you read RT or other international outlets, they talk about stuff in the US you would never hear about here. I don't know why, maybe the politics behind it, but just seeing what's going on in the world, reading a Japanese or Chinese news outlet, Maybe it doesn't align with our political views, but hey, they're people, they're going through, very similar things that we're going through, and we're all interconnected. So keeping my ear to the street, and being like a news junkie. I used to be like obsessed, and I would read it for about like 3 hours a day, but now I chopped it down to like 25 minutes. And then I'm still old school, and I read the physical newspaper, and just making sure what's going on around the world. And that's a way that I was able to pivot, exactly how I saw what happened in Italy with the breathalyzer machine, what happened in Thailand and other parts of Asia with the sanitizing tunnel. They call it a tunnel or a cabin. We're calling it the sanitizing station. And that was one of the integral parts of being able to pivot, by understanding in the marketplace.
I love this. And if there's nothing else our listeners get out of this entire episode, that nugget right there, that idea right there about reading voraciously. And we all talk about what are our favorite books, what are our favorite mindset
Right.
books or tactical books. And books are great for long-term business success. But what you're talking about is what we should be doing as entrepreneurs for short-term business success. It's knowing what is going on in the world, because you talked about your breathalyzer product. You saw that, I think you said, in Italy. And the fact that you were able to make that successful was because you saw a trend that was going on somewhere else in the world. You didn't just contain your observations and your reading to what's going on in America, or what's going on in New York, or what's going on with your liberal friends, or what's going on with your conservative friends.
Right.
You were basically saying, let me see what is going on in the world today and how I can leverage real-time information and real-time trends and real-time everything to be a better, successful entrepreneur. And it's so obvious. I mean, everything is so polarized today. We want to say, okay,
It is.
I'm left leaning, so I'm going to just read liberal stuff, or I'm right leaning, so I just want to read conservative stuff. And it's so limiting. Or a lot of us say we're Americans, so we care about what's going on in America, but we don't read other things. And like you said, read Al Jazeera, read BBT, read all the great or not great international newspapers, because that's really what gives us the insight to be successful. So I'm sorry for harping on this, but it's so important. And you're the first person we've had on this show that's really mentioned the value of doing that. And so I just want to make sure our listeners hear that and get into the habit of reading everything you can. Don't just read the stuff that you agree with, or that will agree with your views, or agree with whatever country you live in. So thank you for saying that. And again, sorry for harping on it, but it just had to be reiterated.
No.
And I love that tip.
You're 100% right. Yeah, I mean, get out of your comfort zone. You read what others are doing. I mean, it's actually very interesting, and especially now with all the technology we have, it's not like 30 years ago when you just have the local paper. I mean, just have a couple news outlets set up, like you mentioned, and just go through them quickly. You can just skim through them, but at least you get a feel of what's going on in the world. And I would like to bring up something in regards to marketing and how I got some press and publicity in regards to the sanitizing station. So we had the product, we had it developed and everything. Now, how do we get press for it? So, no one's going to, the news channel's not just going to come to my house or to my office and say, hey, I want to feature the sanitizing station. So this is another tip for entrepreneurs. If you have a cool product or a good idea, or, something you want to show to the news, or to get some press for, literally just call. I call like every single news outlet. I emailed them, just literally pounding the phones and emailing them back and forth. Like, if there's a list of contacts, just email the president, the VP, the PR specialist, the business development specialist. Just email the hell out of them. Then follow up with a call, 1 or 2 calls, and just hit them up. Some people will never respond to you. Your emails will go into spam. But, I just did like a shotgun blast again, and I just spent, half a day just calling everyone, like a couple times a week. And that's how we ended up getting a lot of press. And I mean, we were on the local, like we have News 12 up here in the Northeast. And then CBS picked us up, ABC, and yesterday, because I speak Spanish, Univision was here. They did a live morning show in the morning from like, it was like 8:30 in the morning. It was pretty wild being on live TV.
You could say anything you want about your product and hope people believe it, but if a news outlet that people trust says something about your product, people are going to believe it. So that, I mean, that's just another just amazing tip. Don't be scared to pick up the phone. And a lot of us we're shy. We don't like to scream from the rooftops about our amazing products, but you got to do it. And you got to get other people talking about your products as well. So absolutely amazing tip. So where do you go from here? What's your plan? Are you going to keep improving the product, I assume? Are you going to try and get the cost down? Are you going to expand your marketing? What does the next year or 2 or 10 look like for this company?
So a combination of everything you mentioned, getting the cost down via increasing volume, right? So that if anyone's in manufacturing or considering manufacturing, with any product, obviously the more volume you make, the better the pricing and that you can get from your suppliers, and in turn you can increase your margins. So that's definitely one of the main focuses. And then just increasing marketing. So calling those news outlets, and then once you get picked up by one news outlet, then they're all in tune with each other. It's a small community. All the producers, they worked with each other, went to college together. They all know each other. So then another news outlet will pick us up. Maybe someone else will pick us up. So going that way, building a distributor network. So solution or say chemical manufacturers, they want to sell and move our product. Other equipment manufacturers and distributors, mainly distributors. So building the distributor network. Hiring a sales team. So I've been doing interviews. We have a couple salesmen right now, making outbound calls, setting up the CRM. So right now we're using HubSpot and, all the phone system, working on the scripts, working on the FAQs, the rebuttals. So trying to build an internal sales team and an external sales team at the same time.
And is this a business that you think, let's say COVID goes away in a year because let's say we have a vaccine. Do you plan to keep moving forward with this business? Do you see other applications for the sanitizing station? Or is this one of those, okay, if COVID goes away next year, you'll be happy that you cashed in on the opportunity and you'll move on to something else?
So it seems that the severity of the crisis has everyone hypersensitive. The workplace anxiety. Who's going to go back into a movie theater right now? Or I love to frequent Broadway. I had multiple tickets per. Broadway's canceled till at least 2021 right now. This doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon. One of the things that we can implement with the machine is maybe another metal detector. Adding a metal detector so we can add like a security aspect to it. And same with the tablet and that whole facial recognition as like a security and access control. So we can always pivot in that direction into the, say, security aspect of it.
I absolutely love that. And you're absolutely right. Even if COVID went away today, even if there was a vaccine today, I know I wash my hands 10 times as much as I used to do it, even when I don't have to. I'm walking around my house. I know my family is not infected. I know the surfaces in my house are not infected, but I still wash my hands multiple times a day, even though I don't have any specific concerns. So I definitely see your point about if something changed, if COVID went away, these habits are now more ingrained in us than they were a couple months or years ago. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. Okay. This has been fantastic. I'd now like to jump in, if it's okay with you and Carol, to the part of the show that we call Four More. And that's where we ask you the same 4 questions that we ask all of our guests. And then the more part of the Four More is where we give you an opportunity to let our listeners know where they can connect with you, where they can find out more about you, and where they can find out more about your business. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay. I am going to take question number one. So you've told us a little bit about working for your father and your grandfather. I don't know if that was your very first business or not, but can you tell us what your first job was or what your worst job was? I'll let you decide which one. And what did you take from
Okay.
it that really has stayed with you till today?
So first business, so I lived behind a public golf course. So I would, go in there with our friends and shoot BB guns and play paintball. But besides that, there were a ton of golf balls in the woods. So we would go and pick up the golf balls, and we would go to the little cleaning machine, and we would clean up the golf balls, and then we would go and approach golfers on the fairway and say, hey, here's 10 balls for $5 or whatever we were selling. So I was 9. I think I was in third grade or second or third grade at the time. So that was my first business, and what I learned that still sticks with me today is just getting over the fear of approaching someone. Half the battle is just showing up. Like once you get in front of them and you just say, hey, I have a product to sell. Just getting over that hump and that fear, because it's like terrifying as like a 9-year-old going up to like whatever, like a 40-year-old guy, coming out of the woods saying, hey, do you want to buy some golf balls? You're just going for it, pulling the trigger, just get in front of people, and don't be scared. Just like picking up the phones. We bombard everyone with emails. Now emails don't even get through. I mean, we all know how many emails we all get. Get old school, pick up the phone, call people. Everyone's home right now. It's easy to get in touch with people and set up Zoom meetings. So just getting over that hump and showing up.
I love that. Get all old school and pick up the phone. Seriously, Jay, I'm always harping on everyone about exactly that. Just pick up the phone. I love it. Okay, John, second question for you. What would you say is the best piece of advice you have for small business owners that you haven't already mentioned today?
I would say, during this crisis, and I'm sure we've lived through multiple crises, the dot-com boom and bust, '08 recession, now this whole COVID disaster that's going on, is to just reassess the businesses and try to make decisions quickly and move fast. Don't wait around. It's better to make a bad decision than no decision. At least just pull the trigger, get it over with, and see what happens. No one knows what's going on right now in this landscape. The president, Congress, no business owners, we have no idea. So just trying different things and pivoting quickly to get over the next hump and the next mountain.
I love that. I 100% agree. It's better to make a bad decision than no decision, because too often, if you make no decision, then you will by default have a bad decision made for you. So it's better to make that
Exactly.
decision and having thought through it than just letting it happen to you. So fantastic tip. I love that. Okay. Question number 3. We talked a little bit about reading. Normally, I would be asking you what your favorite book is at this point. And if you'd like to tell us your favorite book that many of our listeners may not have read yet, that's great. Or if you just want to give us some of your favorite news sources or news outlets that you read, just give us an idea. What should we be reading that we're probably not reading at this point?
In regard, well, I'm just finishing up Atomic Habits, which is great. And I know a lot of your listeners mentioned the E-Myth, which I've read like 4 times. That I definitely, like to review every year or two. But right now with the news sources, my first go-to is the Drudge Report, which is just a great compilation of all the different news sources. I mean, it's a little more right-leaning, but they definitely have some more liberal articles in there. Then I shift over to a Russian news outlet, RT. So you get a whole completely different perspective, say like a little anti-American, and they just have things that you would never hear about in the U.S., which I don't know, we're either trying to cover up or like not display. So RT, Al Jazeera is a little more in the middle. So I like Al Jazeera, and you get like a more like Middle Eastern perspective. And then the BBC, like you mentioned, is great. Also Reuters. So I try to mix it up. And then like every week or two, I'll do like a South American, because I have family in Argentina and Brazil. So I'll do like Argentina news. Then I'll have family in Australia. I'll do like Australia news. And it's crazy. Like we don't hear about like 90% of the stuff that goes on in the world. We just hear about, Biden and Trump and all this crazy election, things that are going on right now. So expand I would say expand your intake of information instead of the normal CNN, Fox rigmarole.
I absolutely
That's
love that,
awesome.
and I'll tell you, I read many of the outlets that you just mentioned, and it's so funny when I am talking to some friends and I'm quoting an outlet that is anti what my typical political views are. I always have to defend the, well, why are you reading that? Well, you've answered that question for us very well. I'm reading that because it makes me a better entrepreneur and it makes me a more rounded person, because we always want to get not just confirmation bias on the things we already believe, but we want to hear what the other side thinks, because that's ultimately what's going to allow us to make well-informed decisions. So love that. Thank you for all those.
That's right.
Well, and
My pleasure.
after all that, the insight of all these worldly views, I'm actually kind of mortified and embarrassed to ask my very lighthearted question of my number 4 of the 4 more, which is, John, what's something you've splurged on in your personal or professional life that was totally worth it? Even though that sounds pathetically shallow right now after what we just talked about, but let's end it on a light note.
That's a good question. I mean, I've just been working like crazy right now, but I would say one of my pleasure outlets is a boat. So I got a boat a couple of years ago. Nothing too fancy, just like a 22-foot deck boat. But we're on Long Island, so we're literally on an island. So the ocean's only a couple minutes away. So even after work, if I can shoot out at like 8 p.m., just go out, maybe catch the sunset. And talk to suppliers in China or email people on my boat. Get some saltwater therapy. That's what I like to do, and it helps me stay sane.
Perfection.
Love it, love it. Okay, so that was the 4 part of the 4 more. Now for the more part of the 4 more. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, more about your company, and anything else you want to let our listeners know.
Sure. So they can find out more about our company at it's called Sanitizing Station.us. That's our website. Also on social media, we have Sanitizing Station on like Facebook, on Instagram, and they can also email me. My name's John, so John B at sanitizingstation.us, and that's the way that you can get hold of me.
Awesome. John, this has been amazing. I love the fact that you were able to start this business so quickly. You were so in touch with what's going on in the world, and you're leveraging it, and just some amazing tips. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I very much want to touch base with you again in a year and see where this business has gone, if it's pivoted again based on what's going on in the world, or what you're doing. And maybe we'll have you back at some point and talk about your breathalyzer vending machine, because I didn't even know about that business. But I have a feeling there are a lot of great lessons to be taken from that one as well. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's amazing being able to be on the podcast. I listen to literally every episode, and I would be more than happy to come on to speak about the breathalyzer and also touch base in a year to see how we progressed and pivoted.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Seriously. How awesome is John? It's seriously fascinating to me, so many things. First of all, I love how he talks about he was working in an aeronautical engineering factory at age 9. Are you kidding me right now? And the fact that he's had all this amazing experience to pump out this product in a matter of months and get it live onto people's sites in such a short amount of time is absolutely fascinating, and just great reminders all the way around.
Yep. He had some amazing tips. I love the tip on reading everything. Doesn't matter if you're liberal, conservative, or in between, read everything, because not only do you want to reinforce the things you already believe, but you also want to learn about what the other side is thinking to make us better, more well-rounded entrepreneurs and people. He had some great tips around publicity. I mean, I loved, and we've heard this before, but his tip on literally just show up. Go for it. Pick up the phone, call people, call news outlets, call newspapers, get your message out there, because you want other people to be hyping your products along with you, because that's where the value really comes from. During this crisis or any crisis, it's so important to reassess and to make quick decisions. And this was obvious throughout the entire discussion that literally John was able to make a decision that he wanted to release this $20,000 manufactured product, and 2 months later he was doing it. So just so many great tips. And this is one of those episodes that I'm going to go back and listen to again, because there were a lot of great tips in there that John didn't make a big deal out of, but you hear them, and the more you listen to them, the more you think, that really makes sense. I got to do that. So amazing episode, and I'm really excited to see where John goes with this business, and whether it's still a business in a year, because who knows what's going to happen with COVID. So, but I have a feeling that he'll do a good job of pivoting if and when the time comes. Okay, and with that said, I think we're good to go for this week. Do you agree, Carol?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay happy, stay healthy, have an amazing week, and we will see you next week on the BiggerPockets Business Podcast. She's Carol. I'm Jay.
Now go read daily and watch trends to pivot your business quickly today.
Wow.
Or here was my alternate. Or now, ready for this? Now, go all old school and actually pick up a phone today. Right? I had an alternative there.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there was lots of good stuff.
2 for 1 week. I like it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. And
Thanks,
we'll see
everybody.
You next time.
Bye-bye.